Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Johnson with Data Recognition Corporation. I'm happy to be here today to support IPDA's webinar series for this month. And along with me today is Christine Kirk, our local Florida representative for TABE. And we're going to be talking about uploading students and automatically creating test sessions to register students for TABE tests in a little bit easier of a fashion for groups that have larger student audiences. As we go ahead and get started, just a quick reminder on if you do have any questions while we're going through this webinar, please use the chat feature at the top of the screen. You can go ahead and put any questions in there. Christine will be monitoring those questions and responding to them or bringing them to our attention if we need to. All your lines will be muted. And as a reminder, IPDA is recording this webinar and it will be posted on the IPDA website within about 48 hours or so. So just again, happy to be here to represent DRC and talk about TABE a little bit more with all the programs. And just as a quick update on where things stand with TABE, we are certainly excited to have many of our programs using TABE 13 and 14. We're also going to talk a little bit about the updates to TABE Class E for the ESOL programs, and then get into the meat of the presentation about the new tools and using the instructional strategies that we have posted to our website and updating the upload features for larger populations. So what's new for TABE? Well, obviously TABE 13 and 14 came out at the beginning of this year, and as most of you know, the standards have not changed. So it's been a fairly smooth transition for most programs that were transitioning from 11 and 12 to 13 and 14. Most programs have seen a reduction in testing times for students that are taking the test. It's a little bit shorter of a testing experience for students, and we will be looking at those testing times in a more official fashion this fall as we work with the Department of Education to set new testing times based on the data that we've collected so far this year. We've just run the report and it's going to be analyzed from our research scientists, so be watchful for that as we look to announce that before the end of the year as well. All the information that we'll talk about today is also found on tabetest.com. We'll have that information coming up on a slide as well. There are still programs using paper and pencil testing, and that's still available for TABE, fully supported with our local scanning system that is available at no additional cost for programs that want to use paper and pencil or need to use it when computer-based testing is not feasible for that. And then also, we won't talk about it too much today, but there is a workforce portal add-on for TABE that will align your reading and math scores to over 900 careers from the Department of Labor's ONET database. So if you're working with IET programs or CTE programs and you want to help students understand where their TABE scores are preparing them for certain careers or certain IET fields, the workforce portal does that in a great fashion. And both Christine and I are happy to share more information on the workforce portal if you're interested in that. For the ESOL programs, TABE Class E offers reading, listening, writing, and speaking, and all of those areas are allowed and recordable with Florida Department of Ed. Again, most programs use reading and listening, and just as a reminder, the testing times for each of those categories is 30 minutes each. For programs that are interested in using writing and speaking, those do have constructed response sections where candidates do write in the writing test and they do speak and have that speaking sample recorded and scored by a human scoring judge, either locally with your own staff or with our DRC scoring team. Any program that's using TABE Online today for 13 and 14 that wants to try out Class E that hasn't done so yet, we're happy to set up a free pilot for that. So certainly let Christine Kirk know, and she'll put her email address in the chat so you have that information if you'd like to get in contact with her. TABE Class E also has scanning for the paper test, just like TABE 13 and 14, and also has hand scoring with our Scorees answer sheets. A couple of other resources. When we talk about resources, there's two main places within our TABE systems. If you're looking for manuals, whether it's test directions, user manuals, administration guides, all of those are kept within the portal. And we'll be in the portal a little bit today during our webinar, so we'll see some of those areas for the information. But when you go into the TABE Insight portal, you're required to log in with a username and password. Just to know, when you're looking for something more of a secure document, that's always going to be in our portal. If you're looking for instructional pieces, whether it's sample questions, our tutorial for online testing to have students practice with online testing, or any of the objectives or testing times, all of that is on our public website of tabetest.com, and it's under the resource section. So anything to do with instructional planning, anything to do with teaching, all listed on tabetest.com, very easy to get to under the resource section. We also have a couple of new things. One of them is our new instructional strategies document that is posted to tabetest.com. We did a national webinar last week that we had over 700 people attend that webinar across the country. And it's a great resource for programs that are looking to connect different instructional strategies to help learners engage more with their TABE and TABE Class E results. So I'll let Christine talk a little bit more on the next slide, just to talk about the instructional strategies and how they can be used within the classroom.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. So we are really excited about these new instructional strategies. They're available for both TABE and TABE Class E. They're really designed to assist the teachers or educators as they work with adult learners. So all of the strategies have links and connections to that content area that is part of TABE or TABE Class C. They are organized into 3 sections of domains, and you'll see those under the basic interpersonal communication skills, or BICS, the cognitive academic language proficiency, or CALP, and then you've got your humanities and your science, technology, engineering, math, and STEM related areas. So within those, you will see a very detailed description of the strategy, step-by-step directions for implementing the strategy, any academic language that's included to help support as you're teaching that strategy and that domain. All kinds of links are available as well. Each strategy is English, but can be adopted into any of the languages that you might be experiencing within your adult learning population, and any literacy challenges. So we're really excited to have this valuable resource. It's very detailed. We did, as Mike mentioned, have a webinar recently, so that was also recorded. So if you're interested in going into a little bit more detail on how to implement the instructional strategies, I highly recommend going and viewing that recorded session as well. Mike's showing where this is available. It is on the tabetest.com site, and it is a download that you can have access to.
Thank you, Christine. And just to reiterate what Christine was saying, when you go into the document, it is a kind of a living document. So every part of the table of contents is a hyperlink. So I'll just go ahead and click on the first one that says Classroom Mingle, and it will take me right to that strategy, and I can work on that strategy and how it connects into each of the different beginning learners or intermediate and advanced learners. And so I have those resources available. So again, that is available right on tabetest.com, right on our resource page. And let me get back to that area real quick. So tabetest.com, under the resources, and you'll see instructional strategies listed right there, and you'll have access to that PDF file that is connected with all those links that are available into it. And just to talk a little bit about our upload feature, going into TABE Online in our portal, many programs have been using, and I'll make this a little bit bigger to be a little bit easier to see, using our test management system, where they create a test session up in the top left corner. They may select reading and math as their test areas. Then they'll add a student at the very bottom, and that will create a test session in our system. And then afterwards, they can come back and either find new students or find existing students or add new students to that session, but you're essentially adding students to test sessions one at a time. So if you are a program that has a lot of students that are registering, it may take a little bit of time, even though it's only about 5 to 7 seconds to register a student with their first name, last name, date of birth, and gender. It may take some time to get multiple students into the session. What we worked on with our technology team is to update our student management upload feature. And so it's an existing feature that's been there, and many people have not used it. I've moved over on our screen to our student management section of the portal. And in student management, you've always been able to either add a student one at a time or upload a spreadsheet of students. And this would upload them into your TABE database, but it would not register them for a test. And that's really the part that we're talking about today, is that we've added some features to this upload process that will now allow you to create the test session and add students to those test sessions with an upload. So if you have a pre-existing registration list, you can cut and paste those names into the file, and we'll walk through those steps as we go through. When I go into student management, I go to the Upload Multiple Students tab, and then I have a blue bar that will provide me two great resources. One is the file layout, which is a PDF, which is all the directions, and one is a sample file of the spreadsheet. It is formatted as a CSV. It does open up in Excel, but it is a CSV, and you do need to keep this as a CSV file. So you don't save it as an Excel file or as a Google Sheet file. You do keep it as a CSV file when you do upload it back into the system. But once we're done completing it, you'll see at the very bottom of the screen, you can go find it on your desktop or your computer and upload that into your system. And we'll do this in a live environment here in a moment. But just to go through a couple of the steps, it's a very small screen, so I will make this one bigger for sure. But when we open up the screen, it will start out on the left-hand side with your site information, your district code, and your school code. And we'll look at those when we get into the live information. And then really it's just about the students, their first name, their last name, their date of birth, and their gender. Those are the required fields that you would register any student for a TABE test for. There are other fields out to the right for ethnicity, for all their demographic areas. And if we keep going out to the farther right, we have their accommodations if you wanted to put an accommodation in there. But there are new fields way out to the right in column AI that have a title of test session, and AJ that says what test you want to go into. If we complete this spreadsheet, we can now upload an unlimited number of students, and it will create a test session that is filled in this column. So a brand new test session that you've never even entered into our portal, you can enter a name in here and enter a code for a test, and it will allow you to upload that into our system. It will work for multiple test sessions, and we'll see that in my example coming up. So I don't have to do this just for an intake session, for example. I could do this for multiple intake sessions, or I could do multiple post-test sessions and create multiple ones of that as well. And I could do some that are using the auto locator and some that are not using the auto locator. So I have the flexibility for them. The only caveat to this upload process is that you're only using this test session name one time. And so if I upload 50 names into my October intake session, then the next time I have more people to go into October, I have to give it another name, like October Part 2, for example. So we'll look at that as a scenario when we get into the live environment. Let me jump over to that real quick. And I'm going to go over to our portal and go to log into our portal at drcedirect.com. And as I log into the portal, I can go right over to manage students, the new tile. If you haven't seen the new interface, we have new buttons on the most frequently used areas. So I can go right to manage students very quickly and up to the top of the screen on manage students. And that's where we were with the slide. Normally we could do this one at a time, and I was playing around with Miami-Dade College earlier today, so remember that. But I could also go to the upload multiple students. And I was playing around with a file that I didn't quite finish, so it gave me an error here from earlier today, but we'll work on that. But I can upload, and I'm going to go to my practice account. So I'm going to go to my TABE training account instead of Miami-Dade. And I can go to my TABE training school. And so now I have some information here listed. And under TABE training, you'll notice that there's a number after my name. So it's MN and then 5 nines, 9999. Same thing after my school. I have a site code. It's MN20001. Those are important to remember where I can find those, and it's always listed under your district and your site. When I open up that spreadsheet and open up that file layout, I can input that information into that spreadsheet so I have that information. And I have one open, so I'm just going to go right to that spreadsheet. So I've created this spreadsheet and I've made the title bar yellow so it's a little bit easier to see, and I'll make this a little bit bigger to be easier to see as well. But over on the top, row 3 is what it's opens up with some sample data. I've already typed over it in row 2 with my own data from my own site of my Minnesota 9999. I think I missed 1 9, so I want to put 5 nines there. And then I also have the site code. These site codes don't change for your location. So this is my TABE training account, so I can actually cut or copy this and then fill this spreadsheet in because they're always going to be the same. The only time that they might be different is if you have multiple locations. You might have to be uploading students into 2 locations at one time, and that's okay. And I'll just use the example that I have another site that ends in 2, and I could, in theory, use that in one of those. So I could have a separate site here and uploading a special student in that one, but I'm going to go back to keep it all the same. So for this scenario, we're going to use one location within our program. They're always going to be under the TABE training account in the TABE training school. And I have now my students. My first one is a real student, Mike Jones, and he has an ID number. I'm not using a middle initial, but I am required to put gender and a date of birth. But I can go ahead and create, and just for ease here, I'm going to create everybody with the last name Jones. And I can go ahead and say Anna Jones, Julie Jones, and keep going down the list and say Bill Jones, and probably should use formal names and use William Jones, Tammy Jones, and I'm going to stop there and just end there for right now. So take away those. So I have 6 new students to put into my system. And it could be 6, it could be 60. If you have a registration list, and I could have cut and pasted all the last names in and cut and pasted all the first names in. I don't have any middle initials, so I'm not going to keep that. I'm going to go ahead and fill in the gender because those are required. And the date of birth, I'm just going to make this easy. Instead of typing, just drag this down, and they're each going to have a different birth date. And we don't need any other information. We don't need country of origin. We don't need their ethnicity as we keep going out to the far right. We don't need to have their home language. But as we get farther out on their accommodations, you'll notice that for the very first student, I put yes for time and a half. So I'm going to give that first student an accommodation, and you can do that just like you can in student management. And then now I get to the test session area. This is column AI that we saw on the slide. We have one session that's called TABE 13 intake for November with the auto locator. Then we have another session down a little bit further that's called TABE 14 post-test for reading level M and math level E. I can set up those sessions. I can have another session. I can have different sessions. And I use all of that information based on setting up the codes in the columns to the right. So the auto locator has a code that's called L13. And I'm going to show that. I'm going to put a couple in there right now. And I'm going to open up our tutorial guide. And this is the PDF document that's listed on the website. It will tell you all the instructions that we're going through today, step by step. But I'm going to scroll very quickly down to the color purple area. And every column, it tells you what to put in that column. And it also tells you if it's required. So you'll see district code is required. School code is required. ID is not required. First name, last name is required. Middle initial not required. As we continue on down, make this a little bit bigger. All the demographics are not required, but you can find out what you could put in there if you need to put any demographics in there. And as we get down to column AI, remember that's the one that we were looking for, it will tell me my test session name. So within test session name, I can use anything that's alphanumeric. I can also use the dash, the underscore, the apostrophe, the periods, and the spaces. So that all of that is allowed when I'm creating a test session name. I wanted to use the auto locator. So the auto locator in column AJ has a code of L13 for the auto locator to go to TABE 13 or L14. If I just want to do a straight TABE test for TABE 13, I use T13 or T14. You'll notice in the next couple of columns that if I am using T13 or T14, then I can say, select what levels of the test to use for reading, math, and language. So you'll notice that I could put a 13E or a 13M in each of the columns for reading, math, and language, and same thing for 14. So all of these can be individualized, or I could let the locator do that and just fill out column AJ. Going back to my spreadsheet just to kind of talk about that a little bit more. I'm going to put L13 in for the first few of them, and then I'm going to take out this next row of locators and move these up a little bit. So now I have 3 of the students that I'm registering taking the auto locator, and then 3 of the other students taking math at level E and reading at level M. So I have those columns filled out. I can get rid of the rest of these because I don't have anybody yet anymore. Now, again, this spreadsheet can be as long as it needs to be, but I'm only going to use it for these 6 students. So I can get rid of this information that I don't have. And I can save this file. Notice that I only have an ID for a couple of the students. They're not required, so that's okay. So everything looks good in my file, and I can come back to my portal and go ahead and find that file we just saved. And I have it on my desktop, so I'll do that real quick. And there it is, my sample IPDAY file. And I can go ahead and upload that and go ahead and click on the upload. It will take a few minutes, so I'm not sure if it'll be quite done before we're done with our webinar today. But I will, if I come back here, just as we saw with Miami-Dade, we could get a confirmation in green, or we get an error message in red that says that the file was either successful or not successful for whatever reason when we have that done. But I've saved that as a CSV. And what I've done now is when it is successful, I can go to test management and find those new test sessions automatically created in that new test session screen for my site. So I'm in my sales training account. If I go ahead and click on showing the sessions, it will allow me, and again, I don't think it's done that quickly, so we're not going to see that test session yet, but if I want to search on a test session with somebody with the first name Bill in it, and see if we can find it fairly quickly. And not yet. So it's not done yet, working into, it goes back up to our servers and gets created, but it will go through that process and allow it to get uploaded into the system for that. If I go back to our managed students and go back to our area to see if we get a result there. Nothing yet done on that file. I'm going to jump back to our PowerPoint. Before I do that, any questions
Yeah,
yet, Christine?
there is actually a question that's a frequently asked question, so I thought we would share it with the group. And the question is, do we have to separate out TABE 11, 12 and TABE 13, 14 sessions, or could they go into the spreadsheet together?
So this upload only works for 13 and 14. Let me show that real quick and just to point that out. When we are in our portal, and I'm going to go to test management, when we are in test management the traditional way, when we are doing it as a traditional test session, I have to select the administration that I am in. So if I'm in an administration, I'm either in 13 and 14, or I'm in Class E, or I'm in the TABE administration, which is our old one that has 11 and 12 in it. So it would only have under the 13, 14, or the C and D. It works for the C and D for Class E, and if I select C and D and I go to student management for C and D, real quick, just to show you this, and I go to manage students, and I'll select C and D, and now if I go to the upload for that, my file layout, instead of being purple, is orange or gold color. So it does adjust for the C and D areas, and what it really changes is that column AI again at the bottom, and I'm going to scroll down to that one real quick, just to point that out. The test sessions, because TABE Class E uses numbers instead of EMDNA, we use C and D for the forms, and then we use 1, 2, 3, and 4 for the levels of the test. So we're flip-flopping letters and numbers on this direction sheet for that. A couple of key things to watch out for when we go back to our spreadsheet. As I mentioned earlier, this test session name, and I'm going to scroll all the way to the right, can only be used one time, because if I do use it again, it will create a second test session and it will get very confusing. We don't have it restricted so that we'll not create another test session. So you would end up with 2 test sessions with the exact same name, and it would be very confusing on your side. So we want to only use this test session one time. So again, if November is going to be a multiple upload, we might want to put the, first half of November, or the dates, the 1st to the 15th, or something in that spreadsheet, 1 to 15, perhaps, like that. Or we can go ahead and say this is going to be November part 2, something that makes it a little bit different. Same thing with our post test. If this is our post test, we didn't put a parameter around this, but we could say post test November and make that a little bit of a different post test. And we could also, change this one up to say reading level E and math level E, and have that a little bit of a different session. And so you can have as many different scenarios on one spreadsheet if you want. I think it works particularly well if you have an intake process, whether you have an open house or whether you have a call for registrations during intake, that you've collected a lot of names of people that will possibly show up, let's say next week for the first day of class. I can upload all of them, register them in with the locator, and be ready for them in anticipation of them showing up. Again, as from our side, you are not charged for a test until a person takes a test. So registering them for a test is not an issue. It doesn't cost anything, but we just want to go ahead and get them in the system so that we can always come back to test management and go back into our website for test management instead of student management, and be able to select a test session. And I'm going to pick a 13 and 14 one real quick here. And I'm just going to go ahead and say this very first one that was used for a New York training, but I can go ahead and select the spreadsheet out into the far right. And on the first day of class, I can either go ahead and print all these test tickets, or I just want to print the last 2 because those are the 2 people that are showing up, and I can go ahead and print those selected ones, or I have the option to print all the test tickets. So if I have 100 students here, maybe I don't want to print 100 test tickets right now. I want to maybe go ahead and save them as a PDF, and that's certainly okay. I can go ahead and print all of them and save it as a PDF before I actually send it to the printer. But I would have all the test tickets handy, and then as Sherry or Abraham or Jeff comes in, I have a test ticket that I can print for them and hand out to that person. Any additional questions, Christine?
Sorry. Nope, that's it.
Okay. I'll just double check here real quick. I'll go back to where we were and see if we have any confirmation yet how well I did my test session upload. And I didn't, something went wrong with that. So I can go ahead and look at the error report and see what I did wrong real quick and see if I can decipher what I did wrong. I'll wait for this to open. It's opening a separate report for that. Tests must be selected in order to create a test session. So I had too much data. It looks like I had too many rows because I had the adult and the grade levels. So I did not have a clean enough spreadsheet for that information. So I think that's because I was messing around with that. So I want to make sure that we are having clean data. But if you do have an upload, you certainly have all these codes that you can go in and make sure you're uploading it correctly into the spreadsheet for that option as well for the upload feature. Let me go back to that. So I can go back and correct those errors and search for that file again and then upload that into the system. I think it typically takes, 1 or 2 tries to get used to what the coding looks like and what the cells need to be before you are successful from the feedback that I have from programs that are using this. Once you kind of get the hang of it, it's a great time saver from having to hand enter students into the system. As a reminder, when we get into our spreadsheet, and I'm going to go back to the spreadsheet that we're using instead of this one. Hold on, let me get there. Oops. I'll pull that one up. Not the error one, I want the sample one. The next time we're in this file, we're not adding to our list. We're typing over all of this information. So we can keep our district code and our site code always the same, but it's not a growing spreadsheet that we're constantly uploading. We're going to always start fresh with new students the next time we upload, and obviously new test session names out to the far right. So we want to do that and have that information always fresh on our spreadsheets that we're uploading. Let me jump back to our slides real quick and catch up where we are with that. So just to mention on the slides where we were, the quick start guide, you have that, it's purple formatted in the background for TABE 13 and 14, and orange or gold colored background for the TABE Class E, C, and D if you're uploading into that for the TABE Class E ESOL students. And as I mentioned, you'll get that green banner or you'll get a red banner like we saw on the red banner just to correct any of the updates that we had in our cells. Typically, it's going to be that you're having something in the cell that the system wasn't recognizing, and you have a chance to update that and then just re-upload the file into the system. With that, I just want to go ahead and thank everybody for joining us today. I want to take a quick second to see if there's any questions that are coming up. Again, I encourage you to go out to tabetest.com. That's where all of our information is. On tabetest.com, as Christine mentioned earlier, the recording for the instructional strategy is posted, but also you have all the information related to both TABE and TABE Class E.
Mike, there is one question.
Sure.
The question is, how can you upload students and avoid duplicate DRC accounts? Will a new account be created for them each time you upload a CSV file?
Sure.
For example, they make an appointment, don't come, but then make a new appointment a few weeks later.
So as you're uploading a person, and I'm going to undo what I did here. So, and again, I'm going to say that this is Michael instead of Mike, just to up the capitals there. So I have Michael Jones with an ID number. Anytime I can always re-upload him into another session. I can always use Michael Jones 8675. I can always upload that and change this information. I can change this to a December test session, or I can change it to a TABE 14 test session. But this test session that I'm doing right now, because I named it November 1 to November 15, he technically has between the 1st and the 15th to show up and take that test. So I want to separate making an appointment with your organization to come take a test versus having a testing window open in the TABE portal. The window is open for as long as you want it to be open, whether it's those 2 weeks in November, whether it's all of November. The test session itself could be open through, many of us, if we look at our test sessions these days in the system, and I'm going to jump over there real quick. If I go into test management and I go to manage test sessions, and I'll just go into that test session that we saw at the bottom of the screen real quick. That test session is open until June 30th of 2030. So if Mike Jones is in this first test session, he technically has, or you technically have, until June 2030 to get him tested. You don't have to register him again. He would be registered in this case for this New York 14M reading and math test, but he may have missed your appointment, but he is still in our system and still open for testing. And that's why we may want to save the test ticket and not have it, thrown away, or it's still a valid test ticket until June 30th. There are some programs that when they're creating their test sessions will change their end date to be, let's say, the end of this calendar year or the end of November. But you can always have that person come back. You don't have to re-add them in the system. But if Mike Jones comes back and it's time for post-testing, he is already in our system. If you try to add a Michael Jones with an ID number of 8675 that was born on January 1st of 1990, the system will not let you. It's important that if this information, first name, last name, date of birth, and gender match, that it will not let you create another Michael Jones. Now, remember earlier I had it as Mike Jones, and that would be a different name in our system. So it's important to always standardize on their formal name or their full name. So we're not using Bill down here, for example, and not using Mike on the top. Because if I use Michael and Christine happens to be working tomorrow at the registration desk, and Mike walks in and says his name is Mike, and she looks up and doesn't find a Mike Jones in the system, she goes ahead and registers Mike Jones. Now we have 2 records for that same student. So it's important as a policy or as a best practice locally to always standardize on the full name so that when other people are searching, they can make sure that they're finding that same student. On the other side, it might be helpful as an area to look at when I go into student management. And I'll go back over there real quick. And I'm going to go into my TABE school. It should have it saved still. If I'm not sure, I'm still in my TABE school, but I could look for Jones and just put the first initial M and double check to see if there's anybody in our program with the first initial M and the last name Jones. And we don't have one in there yet because that file wasn't successful, remember. But I could even make that a little bit less and just go the last name start with a J, because I should find myself in here. There I am. So I've had myself in there both as Mike and Michael. And so again, now I have different ID numbers, I have different birth dates. So they're technically two different students. But we just want to make sure that we're always using the correct or the full name for those students. And if you are using Michael Johnson, January 2nd, 2003, it will tell you that it's being a duplicate student and not let you do that. Any other questions?
No other questions in the chat.
Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and I think there's an IPDA survey to fill out here as we go to end. And as you're clicking on this link to fill out the survey, I do want to remind you that tomorrow there is another IPDA webinar at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a webinar about test confidence, helping adult learners overcome anxiety and success. And so I certainly encourage you, if you have not registered for that webinar, to go to the IPDA website and sign up for that webinar or any future webinar that IPDA is offering. We're very happy to support IPDA's mission and look forward to having future webinars related both to TABE and to TABE Class E. We will go ahead and, as you're completing your surveys, appreciate your time. And if you do have any final questions, you can certainly put them in the chat. And certainly hope you have a good rest of the week and look forward to seeing you or talking to you in the future. Thank you very much.